Welcome. Glad you're here. I'm Jen Lepore, Marketing Team Coordinator at Custom Processing Services, and today our Senior Development Manager, Charlie Casale, and I are going to be talking a little bit about CPS drying services. So, moisture content can make or break an application. So, OEMs need to carefully control it, usually with the help of toll processors. Charlie, can you tell us why moisture is so detrimental?
Certainly, Jen, and as always, I appreciate the chance to join you on these. So moisture, just for like a lot of reasons that you might know at home, like it might stain a product, it might degrade it, it might make it deteriorate faster, could grow mold. All those things are true in raw materials that we use in our toll processing services. But more specifically, when you get into a lot of the chemical manufacturing industries that we support, moisture can reduce reactivity. It can affect the solubility and the stability of the product. So it's an important characteristic that needs to be carefully maintained.
Can any type of material be dried? And what type of characteristics the material needs to have?
Sure. So, yeah, in theory, anything can be dried. If it has moisture in it, again, in theory, you can heat it and drive the moisture off. But in reality, it's as often is the case, it's not that simple. So there are different kinds of moisture. One way to look at moisture is surface moisture. Like if something outside, it rains on it, that's typically surface moisture. But there's another type of moisture called interstitial. So it's like in between things, in between the atoms, maybe on a microstructure level, that could be harder to drive off. So it really is dependent upon our customer's application, how much moisture they want to drive off with. They want to control the moisture. And then the question is, can we, one, technically drive it off? Because sometimes you have to heat things too hot and you kind of ruin it before you get the dryness you need. So those are some of the considerations we certainly want to keep in mind. And sometimes it's a commercial issue, right? So we can dry it off, but not at a commercially viable price.
Okay, so would you say, what exactly would make a material suitable for drying? Can it be any type of material?
In theory, yes. So our customer, let's say, or potential customer will call us and he'll say he has a material. We'll talk about it. There are different drying techniques, different equipment, usually in those conversations of discovery on what he has and where he's trying to get to. One of those processes or technologies or equipment will manifest itself as, hey, this is probably the best way to try to do this.
Okay, so you're kind of going into, one of the topics I want to kind of talk about is, what types of drying methods are available out there?
Well, there's a bunch, but a few of the more popular ones, you can sort of vacuum dry, right? So by lowering the pressure in a vessel, you lower the boiling point, so it makes it easier to drive off moisture. There's fluid bed drying. There is flash drying. There is oven drying, which is kind of a big term. Sometimes it's a tray in the oven. Sometimes it's like a tunnel oven or a conveyor on your oven. And there's probably spray drying is probably the other big one.
So how is drying methods determined for a particular material out there?
Well, it'll depend on a few things. So one will be the nature of the feed. Sometimes you have a sludge material. Sometimes you have more of a wet cake. Sometimes you'll have a liquid. So that's usually the first question that we ask and determine. It'll also be a function of drying temperature, like how hot can we expose the material to, or how hot can we heat the material to, and those could be two different things. And then where they're trying to get to on final moisture can also influence what technology you might choose.
Okay, so let's dial in a little bit on a couple of services that you mentioned, fluid bed drying and flash drying services that CPS obviously has to offer. So let's focus a little bit on fluid bed drying right now. So what do you think some of the main benefits of fluid bed drying are?
So you have very good temperature control. You also have a longer, let's say, process time as compared to flash drying. So you can very carefully control the temperature and the drying and very evenly heat the material and therefore dry all the material to the same length or to the same level is a better word.
Okay, so what equipment is required, and what type does CPS use?
Obviously, other than the fluid bed dryer itself, you do need the feeder, and we do have a couple different kind of feeders. You need then the fluid bed dryer. We also can put a screener in place, so we can screen out maybe the fines or the overs, and then we have an automated, somewhat automated packaging facility, so we can do bulk containers like bulk sacks or drums, and also small bags like 25 or 50-pound bags.
In a very brief description, how does fluid bed drying work?
So you have a conveyor. The fluid bed dryer is conveyor fed, so you have control of the conveyor rate. You have you put the material you feed the material into the dryer, and there is an air stream that comes up from underneath and turns or fluidizes the bed, and that's how you have, like, unlike a tray dryer, let's say, which is very static on a pneumatically. This, you have a lot of air to product exchange, not as much as in a flash dryer, but you have that bed being fluidized and dried, and then discharging on the other end. So it can be a very continuous process also.
Okay, so do you think there's anything unique about the CPS type of approach to fluid bed drying?
Well, in the piece of equipment itself, no, not really. It's a fluid bed dryer. They all kind of tend to be the same. There's different sizes and some other parameters. But what's unique about us is maybe our depth of experience using it, our different feed systems that we have to use it. We also have, again, the screener is a nice feature. We can do nuisance dust collector right off of it, and then of course the packaging varieties or flexibility we have to offer makes it a powerful tool.
Obviously, many industries can benefit from this. So, what industry do you think benefits from it the most, and why would you think that?
Well, the industry is very popular in the pharmaceutical industry because of the slow and even, very precise moisture control that you get. But we also use it in some of the chemical industries, the catalyst industries, and these sort of things for, again, good process control. Where you really want precise control, a fluid bed dryer can be a good selection.
Great. So, now let's dig in a little bit about flash drying.
Sure.
What's meant by flash drying?
Well, I think it's called flash drying because it happens pretty in a flash. It's kind of silly to say, but it happens very quickly. So unlike a fluid bed dryer where you don't have long dwell times, you have very short dwell times here. So you need to be able to put the heat to something to get it to dry enough because you don't have a lot of residence time within the dryer itself.
What type of equipment is needed for this?
Well, similar to the fluid bed dryer, you're going to have to feed the material. And again, with a lot of these drying applications, the feed can vary greatly in how it handles, how it flows. Is it more sludgy? Is it more wet cake? Is it granular? Is it powder? So we have a few different feeding technologies with intermittent and live bottom feeders and things like this. So we can move difficult to move wet feed. And then the dryer itself, we have a gas fired flash dryer. We can get very high temperature ranges, so we can get good moisture control within the dryer, and then a nice product collector on the other side.
Okay, so like I had mentioned in my previous question, what type of industries tend to use flash drying? Do you have any types of examples of these applications?
Sure. A lot in the chemical industry. So the one thing about a flash dryer, though, the material, once it's fed into the dryer, does have to convey pneumatically. So it has to be able to be carried in that airstream. So it tends to be a smaller dried particle that we handle than maybe as compared to fluid bed drying. But as you can well imagine, if you're a powder, a wet powder, a granular in the chemical industry, extruding or compounding. We do some agricultural type products. We do catalysts, minerals, anything that has some moisture in it that can take a little heat of processing and is small enough or light enough to carry in the airstream. It's a very efficient and a very effective dryer with good control. Some customers come to us and say, hey, they have a product that might be 30 or 40% moisture. They want it under 1%. We can do that. Or they might come to us and say, hey, I have something that's 20% moisture. I only want to dry it to 15%. And we can do that also.
Kind of like you had mentioned, it's kind of across a lot of industries. And why do you think flash drying is beneficial to these markets and the types of applications?
Because the process is relatively fast, I think it's economical. It's flexible yet precise. So I can dry to very specific temperature limits. I can dry it all the way to 0 or 0.5%. And then our range of capabilities on the ancillary stuff you have around the dryer to handle different feeds, different airflows, different temperatures, different pressures, to tailor the solution to the feed to get a successful trial done for a customer.
Great. So, like I had mentioned about the fluid bed drying, is there anything unique, about CPS's approach to this as for flash drying?
Sure. Well, similar to fluid bed drying, it is all the ancillary features we have, the different type of feeders to get it in. We do have different setups within the dryer itself that allow us to operate at different temperature ranges, different airflows, different pressures. So we can do some things. If it feeds more delicate, and we do some things, let's say in the agricultural side, that we don't want to be very aggressive in how we handle the material, we can do that. There's other times where we really have to be aggressive to a lot of airflow to get the system to work the way we want, and we have that capability also. And then we do have a lot of capabilities on packing out, again, in the 25 or 50-pound bags, in the drums, and all the way up in the bulk sacks.
Awesome. Well, Charlie, thank you, because I think a lot of people don't know about our drying capabilities, and I think you explained it to the T, and I appreciate that. So thank you so much for stopping by, Charlie, and thank you everyone for watching this month's Custom Processing Toll Manufacturer Minute. If you have any more questions about CPS's drying services, just feel free to reach out to our team at any time. Also, be sure to subscribe to our CPS blog to rewatch or catch up on some of our podcast episodes and get the latest news and insights from all of our experts like Charlie. And we'll catch you later. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.